This is my true story. I lived in my son's house, helping every day, quietly doing what needed to be done. I never asked for praise. I believed love spoke through actions. But one evening, my daughter-in-law posted online, "My mother-in-law never helps." People believed her. They laughed. I stayed silent. That night, I decided silence would speak differently. I shared one video that showed the truth. By morning, her phone wouldn't stop ringing. Everyone saw what I had seen for years. The truth went viral. Before I tell you the truth, tell me where you're watching from and what time it is right now. And please subscribe so my story can reach more people. Every morning I woke before the sun. It had become habit, not duty. The quiet hours felt safe, peaceful, mine. I started by boiling water, making tea, and preparing breakfast for everyone. I cut vegetables slowly, careful not to wake the baby. I liked the sound of the pan sizzling, the smell of onions, the feeling of being useful. By the time my son and daughter-in-law came downstairs, the kitchen was clean, the table set, and lunch already packed. No one noticed. No one thanked me. It didn't bother me then. Doing work without being seen had become normal. After they left for work, I swept the floors, folded clothes, and cleaned the bathrooms. I liked keeping the house neat. It made me feel that the day had purpose. Sometimes, I would stop to look at the family photos on the wall. I remembered when my son was small and used to say he would take care of me forever. Those words were soft and innocent back then. Life has a way of making promises disappear quietly. By noon, I would finish all the chores. I cooked dinner early because my daughter-in-law liked it fresh when she came home. She never said it, but I knew she wanted things a certain way. I never complained. I just adjusted, the way mothers do. I stayed in my room when she had guests. She said it was better that way, that I could rest. Rest never felt restful when you know it's really exile. When the baby napped, I sat by the window and watched the street. Children played, women chatted, men shouted from bikes. Life outside moved freely. Inside, my steps were measured, quiet, careful. I learned to walk around the house like air, present but unseen. I didn't mind at first. I thought peace meant silence. I didn't know that silence could be mistaken for laziness by people who never listened. In the evenings, I helped with the baby again. Bath time, feeding, bedtime. My daughter-in-law would scroll on her phone, filming short videos. Sometimes she smiled at me through the camera and said, "Say hi." I would wave and smile awkwardly. Later, I found out she never posted those clips. She only saved the ones that showed her doing everything alone. That was her story, the young mother managing it all with no one's help. I was invisible there too. My son came home late most nights. He looked tired, distracted. He would eat the food I cooked without knowing it was me who made it. He never asked, and I never told. Love for a child is strange. It forgives even when it shouldn't. Sometimes when they argued, I pretended not to hear. I didn't want to take sides. I just wanted peace. But one evening, after another long day of chores, I heard my name in their conversation. My daughter-in-law said I didn't do anything. She said the house ran fine even when I was visiting relatives. I stood by the door quietly, holding the laundry basket. The words didn't cut deep at first. I was used to being overlooked. But that night, as I folded tiny baby clothes, I felt something different. A small, sharp pain where pride used to be. Still, I kept my routine. The next morning, I cooked again. I washed dishes again. I folded laundry again. My hands moved from memory, even as my heart started to feel heavy. Sometimes, when I wiped the counter, I imagined wiping away the feeling of being unwanted. It never worked. I told myself I was too old to expect gratitude. But deep down, I knew every person, no matter their age, deserves a little respect for what they give. One afternoon, I noticed her phone left on the couch. The screen was lit, showing a notification from social media. I didn't touch it, but the words caught my eye. Something about hard days with no help. I felt uneasy, but I turned away. I wanted to believe she didn't mean me. I wanted to believe my family still saw me. I was wrong. That evening, I prepared dinner as usual, humming softly to fill the silence. I didn't know then that my routine, my quiet, invisible work, was about to become the reason the world would know my truth. That afternoon, everything changed. I was folding clothes when my neighbor came over with her phone in her hand. She looked nervous, like she didn't want to show me but also couldn't hide it. She said, "You should see this." On the screen was a post, my daughter-in-law's name at the top, her words below it. "My mother-in-law never helps. She just sits around." The sentence looked small on the screen, but it hit me like a storm. I read it again and again, hoping maybe I misunderstood. But no, there it was. My name not written, but clear in every word. The picture she posted with it made it worse. It was of her in the kitchen, holding a spoon, smiling at the camera. Behind her, the counter was full of dishes, dishes I had washed, the food on the stove, food I had cooked. She had cropped me out of the edge of the frame. I could see the corner of my sari, just a blur. It felt strange to realize I had been erased so neatly. All that work, all those mornings, gone in one sentence and a single photo. By evening, that post had hundreds of likes. People wrote comments like, "Poor girl, doing everything alone," and "These older women are so lazy nowadays." Some even tagged mutual friends. A few relatives shared it. My phone started buzzing with messages. One cousin asked, "Is it true?" Another said, "Don't worry, maybe she didn't mean you." My hands shook as I scrolled. My heart didn't know whether to break or harden. I waited for my son to say something. He didn't. He just sat on the sofa that night, scrolling through his phone. I wondered if he had seen it. He must have. He saw everything online. But he said nothing. That silence hurt even more than the post. It meant he didn't care enough to defend me. Or worse, maybe he believed it too. I went to bed early that night, pretending to be tired. In truth, I just couldn't stand hearing her laugh in the living room while I lay alone in the dark. My mind replayed every word she had typed. I thought of the days I had ironed her clothes, cleaned her shoes, watched her child. I thought of the nights I had stayed awake when the baby cried and she slept through it. Every memory turned sour. It felt like the house itself had turned against me. The next morning, neighbors avoided my eyes. When I went to buy milk, the shopkeeper smiled politely but didn't talk like usual. The air around me felt heavier. One lie had changed how people looked at me. I realized that reputation doesn't die slowly. It vanishes in one careless sentence. I felt old in a new way that day, not because of my age, but because of helplessness. I wanted to ask her why she did it. But what would that fix? Words spoken in anger fade. Words written online stay forever. Arguing wouldn't erase what people had already read and believed. I decided to stay quiet. But inside, something was growing. Not anger, not sadness, but a need for truth. If she wanted the world to see me as lazy, I would let the world see what I really did. I didn't plan revenge. I just wanted fairness. That night, while cleaning the kitchen, I noticed the small camera near the corner, the one we had installed months ago after a theft scare. It had been recording everything automatically. I checked the memory card and scrolled through the videos. There I was, cooking, sweeping, folding clothes, wiping the baby's face. Everything she said I didn't do was right there, in quiet proof. I sat there for hours watching myself work. It felt strange, sad, and satisfying all at once. For the first time, I saw my own life the way others might see it, small, constant, invisible, but steady. I didn't rush to act. I wanted to be sure. So I waited a few days, thinking maybe she would realize her mistake and delete the post. But she didn't. In fact, she posted more. Pictures of herself doing chores, captions about struggles of being a modern mom. The comments kept coming. I finally understood she wasn't careless. She was building her own image at my expense. That was the real lie. Not just about chores, but about character. She wanted people to believe she was a hero in a house full of useless people. That night, as I sat in my room, I made a decision. I would not argue. I would not shout. I would simply show the truth. When I saw that post spreading, I didn't cry. I just sat still on my bed with my hands folded in my lap. The fan made a soft sound above me, and the house was quiet. My heart felt heavy, but not broken. It was a tired kind of hurt. A hurt that comes when you realize the people you love think so little of you. I didn't call my daughter-in-law or ask her to delete the post. I didn't even tell my son that I had seen it. I just waited to see what they would do. I kept expecting a small knock on my door, maybe an apology, maybe we didn't mean it like that. But nothing came. Dinner was served the same way as every day. She ate first, he watched television, and I cleaned the plates. The next morning, when I went to the market, people whispered. One woman asked carefully if I was feeling well. Another said, "Don't stress yourself, Auntie. Young people talk too much online." I smiled, pretending I didn't know what they meant. But their eyes told me they had seen the post. My world felt smaller that day. The path I walked every morning now felt full of eyes watching me. I came home and closed the gate quietly behind me. At home, the same routine went on. My daughter-in-law laughed on her phone, showing her friends new comments. I passed by with a tray of tea. She didn't even look up. I thought maybe my son would see how wrong it was. Instead, he said, "Don't take social media seriously, Mom. It's just for fun." That word stayed with me all evening. I wondered when mocking your own family became entertainment. I didn't sleep much that night. I thought about all the years I'd worked in silence. The years when I went without new clothes so my son could study, when I skipped meals so he could eat enough. None of that counted now. One small post erased everything I had done. I realized that truth doesn't live in memories anymore. It lives on screens. And whoever controls the screen controls the story. For the next few days, I stayed quiet and kept working. I didn't want pity. I wanted dignity. But the way people looked at me outside, it wasn't the same. The vegetable seller called me poor thing. The laundryman said, "You should rest now, Auntie." Their kindness felt like another form of insult. It wasn't real care. It was based on a lie. Inside the house, my daughter-in-law started giving me fewer chores. She said she would handle it from now on. But she didn't do it to help me. She did it to make her lie look true. I watched her sit on the couch, pretending to clean when the camera was on, only to toss things back into a pile when it turned off. It would have been almost funny if it wasn't so cruel. One afternoon, while feeding the baby, I saw my photo on her phone screen. She had taken it without me knowing, probably when I was half asleep. She captioned it, "This is what I deal with daily." I didn't even recognize myself. The woman in that photo looked tired, small, old. For the first time, I saw what people saw when they looked at me through her words. Not a mother or grandmother, just a burden. That hurt more than anything else. That night, I prayed before bed. I didn't pray for her to change or for people to see the truth. I prayed for patience, for strength not to hate my own family. Hatred never helps. I learned that long ago. But even patience has a limit. As I turned off the light, I realized that sometimes silence doesn't protect you. It only allows lies to grow. I couldn't let that happen anymore. The next morning, I woke early, even before the birds. I made tea, sat in the kitchen, and looked at the small camera again. I remembered all those recordings I had watched. Proof. Honest proof. I knew then that I didn't need to explain myself to anyone. I just needed to let the truth speak, not through anger, not through words, through what was already there. I didn't plan anything big. I just knew I couldn't stay silent anymore. The house felt heavy that morning, full of unspoken things. My daughter-in-law was laughing again, showing someone on her phone the post she made. I could hear her saying my name, pretending it was a joke. My son left early, like always, not wanting to be part of it. I sat at the table with my tea, watching the steam fade. I thought about how much peace I had traded just to keep this family together. For years, I stayed quiet to avoid fights. Now, silence was being used against me. That's when I made my decision. I wasn't going to shout, argue, or explain. I was going to show the truth exactly as it was. After breakfast, I went to my room and opened my small cupboard. Inside was the old phone my son had given me 2 years ago. It wasn't fancy, but it worked. I turned it on and opened the gallery where I had saved all the clips from the kitchen camera. They were all there. Dates, times, full days of quiet work. Me cooking, cleaning, washing, picking up after the baby. My daughter-in-law walking by with her phone, smiling for her own camera. I scrolled slowly, watching pieces of my life pass by in small boxes. It wasn't pride I felt, it was relief. I finally had proof that I wasn't crazy, lazy, or useless. I was just unseen. I didn't tell anyone. I didn't want another fight. I spent the afternoon editing one short video. It was only a few seconds long. In it, I was sweeping the living room while my daughter-in-law lay on the sofa, scrolling through her phone. The sound was clear, her laugh, my broom brushing the floor. That was enough. I didn't need words. The truth spoke for itself. When evening came, I sat quietly on the veranda. My grandson played nearby. My daughter-in-law was busy taking another selfie, pretending to cook. The irony almost made me smile. I opened my phone and stared at the small upload button. My finger hesitated for a moment. I thought about my son, about how this might embarrass him. But then I remembered how he had scrolled past her post like it was nothing. He didn't defend me, didn't even ask if I was okay. That memory hardened my heart. I pressed upload. The video began to load slowly, and I felt something strange. Peace. After posting, I didn't check the comments. I didn't tell anyone. I went to bed as usual. My room felt different that night. Not larger, not brighter, just lighter. I realized that carrying unspoken pain takes more strength than people know. Letting go, even quietly, can feel like breathing after years underwater. The next morning, the sun was already high when I woke up. My phone was buzzing on the bedside table. I thought maybe it was another spam call, but when I picked it up, I saw hundreds of notifications. The video had spread faster than I ever expected. People were sharing it, commenting, tagging her name. "So this is the truth," one comment said. "She's the real one working." Another wrote, "Respect to this grandma." I didn't smile, but I felt calm. Justice, when it comes, doesn't always shout. Sometimes it just stands quietly, and everyone sees. Downstairs, I heard my daughter-in-law's phone ring again and again. She was pacing the floor, her voice shaking as she answered. My son came home early, his face tight and pale. The house felt like a storm had passed through it. But I stayed in my room, folding clothes like always. I had nothing else to do, nothing else to prove. The truth was out there now, living its own life. That day, for the first time in a long time, I didn't cook lunch. I didn't clean the dishes. I just sat by the window, drinking tea and watching people pass by. I felt free in a quiet way, not because anyone apologized. They didn't. But because finally, I didn't have to defend myself anymore. The truth had done that for me. The proof was always there, just no one cared to see it. Every day I worked like a shadow, quiet, steady, invisible. I never asked for thanks. I only wanted respect. But when that post went up, I realized that silence had hidden my worth instead of protecting it. The camera footage became the only witness I had. It showed every small truth people ignored. The way I woke before sunrise, the way I served breakfast before anyone came to the table, the way I folded their clothes while they laughed in the living room. It was all there. The proof of my life, stored in that tiny card inside the camera. I watched the clips again, slowly, letting each one remind me that I was not useless. I had given my strength to this house. The only mistake I made was expecting gratitude. In one video, I was cleaning the floor. My daughter-in-law was sitting near the window, scrolling on her phone. She tilted her head, took a selfie, and smiled. Behind her, my reflection appeared faintly on the floor tiles, bent, tired, holding a mop. That one frame said everything. She showed the world her perfect life while stepping over the woman who made it possible. In another clip, the baby cried. I rushed to lift him, rocking him in my arms. She stayed seated, adjusting her hair for a video. That was the moment I knew I didn't need to defend myself. The truth already existed. All I had to do was let it breathe. I selected one clip, the one that showed her lying on the sofa, phone in hand, while I cleaned behind her. It was quiet, raw, real. No editing, no words, no filters. Just life as it was. I stared at it for a long time. I thought about all the people who had believed her lies online. I wondered if they would believe this too, but it didn't matter. I wasn't doing it for them. I was doing it for me. For the part of me that had been humiliated in front of strangers. For the woman who had spent her life being told to stay in her place. That night, I sat in my room and uploaded the clip. My heart beat slowly, not from fear, but from relief. When it finished, I didn't watch it again. I didn't care about views or likes. I just knew that somewhere out there, The truth was finally walking free. The rest was up to fate. I put the phone aside and went to sleep early. For the first time in months, I slept peacefully. When I woke up the next morning, the house was strangely quiet. Usually she would be laughing on her phone or humming to herself. But that morning, there was only silence. My phone buzzed again and again on the table. I picked it up and saw hundreds of messages, comments, and shares. The video had spread fast, faster than I ever imagined. People wrote things like, "So this is what she really does," and "Bless this grandmother." I didn't reply. I didn't even smile. I just stared at the screen and thought, this is what truth feels like. Heavy, but fair. A few minutes later, I heard my daughter-in-law's voice. She was shouting into her phone, her tone panicked. Her friends must have called her. Her post was being shared with mine side by side, the lie and the proof together. The difference was clear. She tried to delete her post, but screenshots were already everywhere. The internet doesn't forget. I didn't enjoy her pain, but I didn't feel sorry either. Some lessons come only when the noise turns against you. When my son came home, he looked angry. He asked why I had posted the video. I didn't answer. I just handed him my phone and said, "Watch it." He did. Then he didn't say another word. He just sat down quietly. For once he saw what I lived every day. Not from my mouth, but from his own eyes. That was enough. That night, I didn't cook dinner. No one asked me to. The house stayed quiet. The truth had done its work. I sat by the window, watching the sky darken, feeling calm. I thought about how small lies can grow like weeds, but truth, even one small piece of it, can burn the whole field clean. That night, I sat alone in my room. The house was dark, quiet, and still. My hands shook slightly as I held my phone. I wasn't scared, just nervous. I wasn't used to doing things like this. All my life, I had stayed in the background, working quietly, never asking for credit. But tonight felt different. Tonight, I was not trying to prove anything. I was just setting something straight. I opened the video one more time and watched it again. My eyes filled with tears, not because of sadness, but because of how ordinary it was. I wasn't trying to expose anyone. I was just showing what my days looked like. There was no anger in that video, just truth. I clicked the upload button and watched the bar move slowly across the screen. My heart felt heavy and light at the same time. Heavy with memories, light with freedom. I didn't write a long caption, just a few simple words. Sometimes silence works harder than noise. That was all. I didn't add names. I didn't tag anyone. People would see what they needed to see. I placed the phone on the table and turned off the light. For the first time in a long time, I fell asleep easily. I didn't dream of anger or hurt. I just dreamed of quiet. In the middle of the night, my phone buzzed. I ignored it. Then it buzzed again. I turned over, still half asleep. The sound didn't stop. I picked it up once and saw notifications covering the screen. I didn't understand how fast things could move online. The post had already started spreading. I put the phone down and went back to sleep. The noise didn't matter anymore. The truth had already left my hands. When the morning came, I walked into the kitchen as usual. The sun had just started coming through the window. My daughter-in-law was already there, sitting with her phone. Her face looked pale. Her eyes were wide, staring at the screen. The phone rang again and again. She answered, said a few words, and hung up. Then it rang again. I didn't need to ask what was happening. I knew. The video had reached her friends, her family, everyone who had seen her lie. The same people who had commented on her post were now tagging her in mine. The same ones who had called me lazy were now calling her ungrateful. I didn't say a word. I just boiled water for tea the same way I always did. She looked at me once, but quickly looked away. Her phone buzzed again, but she didn't answer this time. I heard her whisper to herself, her voice breaking. I didn't feel proud or victorious. I just felt quiet inside, the kind of quiet that comes after a long storm finally ends. Later that morning, my son came home from work early. His face looked tired. He asked what had happened, but his tone wasn't angry anymore. It was confused. I handed him my phone. He watched the video in silence. I watched him as he did. For the first time, I think he saw what I had gone through, not in words, but in images. When he finished, he didn't speak. He just nodded slowly and walked out of the room. I didn't follow him. Some truths don't need to be explained. They just need to be seen. The rest of the day passed quietly. My daughter-in-law stayed in her room with the curtains closed. The house felt strange, not tense, but still. I sat on the veranda and looked out at the road. A few neighbors waved when they passed. Some smiled, some nodded. They knew. I didn't feel the need to tell them anything. People had seen enough. The internet had done what I could not do with words. That evening, when I sat down for dinner, no one spoke. The food was simple, but it tasted peaceful. I didn't want revenge. I only wanted fairness. That night, as I washed my cup and turned off the lights, I realized something important. Truth doesn't always shout. Sometimes it just stands quietly, waiting for the right moment to be heard. And when that moment comes, it doesn't ask for permission. It just shines. The next morning, I woke up before sunrise like always. The first thing I heard wasn't the birds. It was my phone vibrating on the table again and again. I didn't rush to check it. I poured myself a glass of water, took a slow sip, and looked out the window. The world outside looked the same, but I could feel something different. My phone had been buzzing all night, and now it was non-stop. I picked it up, and there it was. Thousands of messages, comments, shares. The video had gone everywhere. People were tagging my name, sharing it on pages I had never heard of. Some said it was heartbreaking, others said it was powerful. I just sat there, reading slowly, trying to understand how a small truth from my kitchen had reached strangers across the world. I scrolled through the comments carefully. Some people wrote kind things. They said, "This grandmother deserves respect." Others shared their own stories, saying they had been treated the same way by their families. Some even tagged their relatives, writing, "See, this is what you do to our mom." I didn't expect any of it. I had only wanted peace, not fame. But truth has its own way of spreading. It doesn't stop once it starts. Downstairs, I heard my daughter-in-law's voice. It was sharp, full of panic. She was on the phone saying, "No, I didn't know she recorded that. No, it's not what it looks like." Then the phone rang again and again. Her words became quieter each time. I could tell she was scared. The same people who had liked her post were now sending her the link to mine. Some asked her why she lied. Others said they couldn't believe how she treated me. Her voice broke into small, shaky pieces. I didn't go downstairs. I didn't want to see her face. I just sat in my room and let the noise pass through the walls. By mid-morning, the news channels had picked it up. Someone had reposted the clip on a local page, and now reporters were calling my phone. I didn't answer. I didn't want to speak to cameras. I didn't want to be a story. I just wanted my truth to live quietly in the open air, where no one could bury it again. My son came home from work earlier than usual. His face was pale. He didn't shout, didn't ask anything. He just looked tired. He turned to his wife, who was sitting on the sofa holding her phone like it was burning her hands. She didn't look up. I went to my room before they could say anything. I didn't want to listen to excuses or tears. Outside, the neighbors had started whispering. Some called through the gate to ask if I was okay. Others came just to peek, curious about the woman from the video. I answered politely but didn't talk much. It wasn't about being proud. It was about being done. When a lie breaks in public, the truth doesn't need to shout. It just stands there quietly, and everyone else makes the noise. By afternoon, my daughter-in-law's phone stopped ringing. She turned it off. Her friends had stopped messaging her. The accounts that once praised her now avoided her. The house that used to echo with her laughter was silent. My son didn't speak to her. He just stayed outside for a long time. I could hear the sound of him pacing near the garden. I wondered if he finally understood what his silence had cost me. Sometimes the pain we cause doesn't come from words. It comes from not stopping someone else's cruelty. That night, I didn't touch my phone. I left it on the table and went to bed early. My mind was calm, but my heart was heavy. I didn't want to destroy anyone. I only wanted to be seen for who I really was. But the world doesn't give quiet justice without noise. I had learned that now. The video had turned into something bigger than I ever meant it to be. People were calling me strong, brave, bold. But I didn't feel like any of those things. I just felt like a woman who finally refused to be erased. When I closed my eyes, I thought about my husband, about the years we worked to build a home full of love. I wondered what he would think of all this. Maybe he would be proud that I stood up for myself. Or maybe he would just hold my hand and say, "You've done enough now. Rest." And that's what I did. I let the world talk while I finally slept in peace, knowing the truth was finally louder than the lie. By the next morning, the whole street knew. I didn't leave my room at first. I could hear voices outside, neighbors talking softly, pretending they weren't gossiping. The sound didn't bother me anymore. I just sat near the window, folding my shawl neatly, breathing in the morning air. My daughter-in-law hadn't come out of her room since the night before. My son sat on the porch with his head in his hands. No one was speaking. The house that once buzzed with noise had fallen into a strange silence, the kind that feels heavy, not peaceful. My phone still kept ringing. Journalists, strangers, old friends, everyone wanted to talk. I didn't answer. I wasn't looking for attention. I had said everything I needed to say without speaking a single word. The video was still spreading. Someone had made it into a story online. Headlines called me the grandmother who exposed a lie. I didn't read all of it. I didn't want to see my life turned into entertainment. For me, it was never about revenge. It was about truth. Around noon, my daughter-in-law finally came out. Her eyes were swollen from crying. She walked past me without saying a word. I didn't stop her. Sometimes silence is the only punishment that fits. My son followed her, asking her to eat something. They both sounded tired. I sat quietly in my chair, looking at the clock. For years I had lived like a shadow in this house. Now they both avoided looking at me. It was strange, almost sad, but I didn't regret it. Respect built on lies is not worth keeping. That afternoon, the doorbell rang. It was one of my old neighbors, the same woman who had once shared my daughter-in-law's post online. She looked nervous. She held a small box of sweets and said she came to check on me. I could see guilt in her eyes. I took the box, smiled politely, and thanked her. I didn't say much else. I wasn't angry with her either. People believe what they see. Now they had seen something different. That was enough. Inside the house, the mood stayed tense. My son kept pacing from one room to another. My daughter-in-law stayed quiet, avoiding her phone. Every time it rang, she jumped. Her friends had stopped supporting her. Some had even messaged me privately, apologizing. They said, "We didn't know you did so much." I didn't reply. I didn't need to. The truth had already spoken louder than any apology could. That evening I made tea for myself. No one joined me. I sat outside on the porch and listened to the wind rustling through the trees. For the first time in years I felt light. The same house that once made me feel invisible now felt like my own again. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't argue. All I did was show what was real. That small act changed everything. Later, when my son came to me, he looked tired and ashamed. He tried to speak, but the words didn't come out. I just told him to sit down and rest. I didn't want him to feel punished. I wanted him to understand. Sometimes understanding hurts more than anger. He stayed silent for a long time. Then he said softly, "I didn't know." I didn't reply. There was nothing left to say. When night came, the house was quiet again. I turned off my phone before bed. I didn't need to see any more messages. The world already knew what I had lived through. I didn't want to live through it again on a screen. I closed my eyes and thought about all the years I had worked, all the moments when I was told I didn't do enough. Those memories didn't hurt anymore. They felt distant, like something I had finally outgrown. I learned something in all this. Lies can travel fast, but truth moves deeper. It may take time, but it always finds its way. I never wanted to expose anyone. I just wanted peace. And now, in this quiet house, I've finally had it. Maybe one day my daughter-in-law will understand what she did. Maybe she won't. But I don't need her understanding anymore. I have mine. That night, after everything had gone quiet, my son came to my room. His face looked tired, like someone who hadn't slept. He stood by the door for a while before speaking. I didn't ask him to come in. I just kept folding clothes on the bed, slow and calm. Finally, he sat down on the chair and said, "Mom, why did you post that video?" His voice was soft, not angry anymore, just confused. I looked at him for a long time before answering. I told him that for years I had been doing everything quietly. I said that all I ever wanted was to be treated with respect. I reminded him that I had never once complained about my daughter-in-law, never raised my voice, never interfered in their lives. And yet, one post, one lie, had turned everyone against me. He looked down at his hands. I could see shame in his eyes. He started to speak, but I stopped him. I didn't want excuses. I told him that if I had stayed quiet, the lie would have become the truth. People believe what they see, not what they hear. He nodded slowly. Then I asked him a question that made him look up again. I asked, "If it wasn't me, if it was someone else, your friend's mother, your wife's mother, and you saw her being insulted online, would you have stayed silent then?" He didn't answer. He didn't need to. Silence can sometimes say more than words ever can. After a long pause, he said quietly, "She's sorry." I shook my head. Sorry doesn't erase what's done in public. I told him I didn't want apologies. I wanted awareness. I wanted them both to understand that the internet might forget posts, but the heart doesn't forget humiliation. I had spent days reading strangers call me lazy, useless, and worse, all because of one careless post. He lowered his eyes again. I could tell he finally saw what his silence had cost me. A few minutes later, my daughter-in-law came to the door. Her eyes were red from crying. She didn't come inside. She just stood there, holding her phone, whispering that she wanted to explain. I told her there was no need. The video had already explained everything. I didn't raise my voice or say anything harsh. I just said, "Now the world knows what this house looks like when the camera isn't yours." She started crying again and left. I didn't follow her. I sat down and looked at the floor for a long time. My heart wasn't angry. It was just tired. After they left, I went to the kitchen. The plates were still in the sink. I washed them slowly, one by one. The water felt warm on my hands. I realized that this, cleaning quietly after everyone else, was what I had been doing all my life. But now it meant something different. I wasn't doing it because they expected it. I was doing it because I wanted peace. I wasn't the same woman who stayed silent out of fear. I was someone who had found her voice without shouting. Later that evening, the phone rang again. It was a reporter asking if I would speak on camera. I said no. I wasn't a story. I was just a person who got tired of being erased. The reporter thanked me anyway and said, "You inspired a lot of people." I didn't know what to say to that. I wasn't trying to inspire anyone. I was just trying to breathe. When I went to bed that night, the house was quiet again. I could hear my grandson sleeping in the next room. I smiled softly. Maybe one day he would grow up and understand what really happened. Maybe he would remember his grandmother not as someone who caused a scandal, but as someone who stood up for herself when no one else would. I turned off the light and whispered a small prayer, not for revenge, but for peace, for understanding, for the strength to forgive, even if they never said sorry. I knew the world would move on. New stories would come, new lies, new truths. But this one would stay with me. It had changed me. It had taught me that sometimes the hardest battles happen inside the home, behind smiles, behind kindness, behind silence. But even in that silence, truth waits. And when it finally steps forward, it doesn't shout or beg. It just stands there still and strong until everyone sees it. That's what I had done. And for once, it was enough. The next morning felt different. The air in the house was calm, not heavy anymore. I woke before everyone else, as I always did. The sun was coming through the kitchen window, and the light looked softer than usual. I made tea slowly, enjoying the sound of water boiling. For the first time in a long time, I wasn't thinking about chores or what people would say. I was just there, breathing, alive, and at peace. The world outside was still talking, but inside my home, I had silence, the kind of silence that doesn't hurt anymore. When I stepped outside, a few neighbors waved to me. Their smiles were small but real this time. No more pity in their eyes, no more whispers behind my back. One of them said quietly, "We saw the video, Auntie." "You did the right thing," I nodded but didn't answer. I didn't need praise. Justice isn't about being right in public. It's about finally being able to look at yourself without shame. For so long, I had lived with a label I didn't deserve. Now that label was gone. My son went to work without saying much that morning. But before leaving, he paused at the door and looked back. "Take care of yourself, Mom," he said softly. Those words, small and simple, meant more than any apology. My daughter-in-law stayed in her room all day. I didn't go near her. I wasn't angry anymore. I just didn't have anything left to say. Some lessons in life come too late to fix, and that's how it was for her. Later that day, I walked to the market alone. People smiled, some greeted me warmly, others gave me respectful nods. It felt strange but nice. I wasn't invisible anymore. I bought vegetables, some flowers, and a small box of sweets. On the way home, I gave the sweets to a group of children playing by the road. They didn't know who I was or what had happened. They just smiled and said thank you. That felt like the real reward. Kindness shared without reason. When I returned home, the house was quiet again. My grandson ran up to me, hugged me, and said he missed me at breakfast. I held him close and kissed his head. Children don't see lies the way adults do. They see truth naturally. Maybe one day when he grows older, he'll understand what I went through. Maybe he'll remember that his grandmother stood her ground, not with anger, but with honesty. That's what I hope he carries forward, not revenge, but respect. That evening, I went to the veranda with my cup of tea. The sky was turning orange. The air was still. I thought about everything that had happened, the lies, the humiliation, the noise, and finally, the quiet truth. I realized justice doesn't always look like victory. Sometimes it looks like peace. Sometimes it's just knowing you no longer have to explain yourself. I smiled for the first time in days, a real smile. Not the kind you wear to keep the peace, but the kind that comes when your heart finally feels light. My phone buzzed one more time. A message from an unknown number said, "Thank you for showing people what mothers go through." "You gave us courage." I read it twice, then put the phone down. I didn't reply. It wasn't my fight anymore. I had done what I needed to do. I had cleared my name, not with words, but with truth. That was my justice. As night came, I closed all the windows and sat on my bed. I looked at the small picture of my late husband on the wall. I whispered, "You'd be proud." I think he would have been. Not because I proved someone wrong, but because I finally chose myself. I finally stopped being silent. I finally remembered that dignity isn't something people give you. It's something you protect, even when you're alone. When I turned off the light, I felt no fear, no anger, only peace. My daughter-in-law had wanted attention. She got it. My son had wanted quiet. He got it too. And me, I got justice. Not from the world, not from anyone else, but from within. I learned that truth once spoken never fades. It may shake people, it may break lies, but it never disappears. It stays, clear and strong, just like the sound of my own heart reminding me. I was never useless. I was never weak. I was only quiet. And now, I didn't have to be anymore.